Hi, my name is Marion Woodman. I'm one of the instructors for Pacifica Institute's Geropsychology course, and today I'm going to be talking to you about archetypes of the mature feminine. Not just about women, but certainly the feminine that exists in all of us. Jungian analyst and one of Pacifica's godmothers, Marion Woodman, speaks directly about the archetypes of the older woman in her audiobook, The Crown of Age. Highly recommend this. It was released in 2001 by Sounds True. It's about 2 hours long. Get it. Re-listen to it. We're going to focus, though, for this lecture on two archetypes in particular, and that is the Virgin and the Crone. The Virgin being she who is one in herself, and the Crone being the wise old woman. Woodman speaks to these archetypes throughout the body of her work, and for now, we will primarily focus on how invoking the Virgin enables women to grow into an authentic crondom. Woodman teaches us that the term crone is etymologically related to crown, and at one time was a term of respect. And many women today are reclaiming this word as marking a time when one has acquired a fair amount of life wisdom. However, Woodman takes pains to point out that the growing old does not automatically mean that one becomes a crone and that one is wise. Achieving wisdom requires abandoning the shoulds in life, dedicating all of your resources to finding your own true self. Jung would call this individuation. Joseph Campbell might describe it as entering the forest alone when there is no path. For women, it is not so much the taking on of a heroic quest as it is simply discovering who you are when you stop living to meet the expectations of others, when you stop pleasing and make others comfortable. For now, let's look at the Virgin, she who is one in herself. Marion has written extensively about this archetype, which represents bringing the feminine into consciousness in both men and women. As you might expect, this virgin is not someone who has not had sex. The virgin belongs to no man. She belongs only to herself. In The Crown of Age, Woodman states, she has the courage to sort out what is her and what is not her. She knows and lives her values. If the virgin is not strong, you will never get to crondom. So, what makes the virgin strong, one might ask? Woodman would say it is the paradox of a strong ego that surrenders to a bigger process, the call of soul. She states, the ego must be surrendered to a higher power if you are to discover who you are, if you are to discover your soul, without all the claptrap of the complexes. Now, the Virgin, in the psyche of a woman or a man, enables us to listen to the whisperings of soul and follow their lead, even if that means a radical departure from the plans we have made for our lives and the hopes and dreams of our parents and loved ones. Now, you also might ask, how does Woodman imagine this higher power that we are surrendering to? And one answer would be in the image of a third archetype, Hagia Sophia, or Greek for holy wisdom. In her intensive trainings, Woodman begins and ends each day with a ritual invoking Sophia, asking for her guidance as it is communicated through dream, creative expression, and body experiences. This is her particular way of honoring the numinous form of feminine wisdom, of the capacity of the feeling function, which is an important point. And it's important also to note that this process of connecting to feminine wisdom is as essential for men as it is for women in terms of integration. Now, it's easy for us to imagine how activating the Virgin might play out in midlife, as many of you have begun to watch your dreams, listen to the still, small voice inside, and made, no doubt, dramatic changes in your life direction in order to follow the call to Pacifica. However, Marion goes on to talk about how the Virgin transforms into the crone further down the road at 60 or 70, and some of you may be there as well. She puts it into the context of powerlessness. And I find this extremely compelling and important. So, especially in our conversation about aging. Now, we're all aware of how the elders of our culture mostly become irrelevant and disempowered with time. This is unfortunately true of American culture. We lose our physical strength, our keys, and eventually our wits. Woodman admits old age can be absurd. She says, as younger people find power in putting older people down. Even she has experienced this. However, she turns directly into this problem and emphasizes the task of old age is, again, surrender. She says, quote, there is meaning in letting go, to find out what is at the core, what is essential. Your responsibility now is to your spiritual strength. This is the crowning of your life. End quote. So, we can see that the experience of becoming less important, having less authority and control, of losing all that we based our young egos on, beauty, power, and competency, forces us to go exactly where the soul demands, inward, where we discover the truth about life. She says, quote, the crone has come to the place of no power, and therefore she can be trusted. She will tell you the truth, and that will release you from your own illusions that are crippling you. End quote. From our willingness to surrender to the loss of worldly power, we come into consciousness with something even greater. We come into relationship with Sophia, and with that comes a presence that is more powerful than anything else. Listen to this description of the power a crone holds. A real crone who is in presence changes the atmosphere of the entire room. Their feeling function holds the intensity of the room. They are like a tuning fork that resonates through every person in the room, and what comes in is the feminine relationship, the capacity to feel an environment. The highest consciousness in a room will hold the room at that level. It's like a radiance that goes through. And that's how I imagine the crone. End quote. So we have looked at several ways the ego must surrender in order to become the conscious virgin who can then evolve into the wise crone. Give up the things we think we should do in order to follow our intuitions, and give in to the losses of old age, our worldly power, and the authority that comes from that. Yet, there is another metaphor that Woodman comes back to time and again, which is crucial for our look at the aging female, and this is the dance of body and spirit that results in the divine union which she calls soul. This is perhaps the central theme of her life's work, and we're only going to just barely touch the surface here. But I wanted to make it a part of our discussion as it instructs us in the art of living consciously and fully to the very last second of breath. Woodman reminds us that spirit without matter is ghost, and matter without spirit is corpse. They are dependent on each other. She goes on to say, if spirit does not penetrate matter, there is no great dance. You notice the language she uses calls to mind the act of human lovemaking, which requires the female to receive the male, which is another kind of surrender, for the purpose of creating new life. Woodman would say the same is true of creating new psychological life, that the body, the feminine matter, even as it moves toward death, must continue to surrender to the divine spark, the masculine spirit. She must allow herself to be penetrated and animated. And this union continually creates soul, embodied spirit. In this dance, chronological age really has no meaning, and yet it is only in our aging, and this is the beautiful part, and thank God for Marion to give us this message, that it's only in our aging that we can truly surrender at last to this alchemical transformation. Again, I highly encourage you to read whatever you can of Marion's work. And if you have a chance to check out The Crown of Age, she goes into much more detail and much more around this whole concept. But I think that's enough for now to add a little bit of texture to your reading about the staff and the distaff that you had from the D2L assignments. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.